mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Knighted Ones podcast, episode number 69. We had a little error there when it came to the background, so sorry about that. Welcome, and we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst, and hoops player, an infamous, yes, that's infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like us and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, of which we are the representative for the Big 12 Huddle. This week, we have a jam-packed show. There's a lot to talk about this week. We had questions about defense and who we were going to hire as defensive coordinator. That was answered this week, as well as a host of other positions. And more importantly, we have some conversation to be had about who we kept. In addition to that, we hired an O-line coach, and he was doing work and putting in work this week. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Trey Neal will join us to talk about his experiences with Mike Dawson and about Alex Grinch. He has a lot of experience, and he'll be bringing that to the table to give you guys the inside track on what to expect. And of course, you'll have the rest of the team. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring to the stage our producer, Nobra.
Hey now.
Yeah, I just totally threw you under the bus before we started there. So I hope you're okay with that.
I was petting my cat. I got distracted.
Wow, B. All right. In addition to that, let me go ahead and welcome the only UCF national champion in college sports podcasting, Trey Neal.
Gentlemen, how we doing?
You use that word loosely every single week. I'm really excited about what you're going to be talking about this week, giving us the inside track on Coach Dawson. There, when he was here, there was some question marks around, his tackling, the team's tackling under his tutelage, and a few other things. So I'm excited to hear about that. For those of you just tuning in, also as a reminder, on Thursday we'll be doing a podcast live kickoff for the basketball season. So Ben Stout, our local ESPN analyst and 7-foot-tall podcaster, will be joining another former UCF player in Chance McSpadden, who will be talking all about getting us ready for the Big 12 conference in basketball. So super excited about that. Without further ado, and until the rest of the crew shows up, let's go ahead and get right into it. So Scottfrost added some people to his coaching staff. First off, Alex Grinch hired as DC. This was a controversial, to say the least, pick. Alex Grinch was known as a fast riser in the college football world, and then ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw and was fired at his last two jobs as defensive coordinator. So talk a little bit about that, Trey. What do you know about Alex Grinch?
Yeah, quick story. He actually recruited me in high school when he was at Missouri. He signed one of the guys that I played with to go to Missouri, Thomas Wilson. We actually were trying to get him too. But yeah, I mean, I went and watched, his Oklahoma stuff, just some stuff, we kind of clicked through it real quick. And then I watched what they did at USC. To me, he has a good defense. He runs a good defense. It's not, I wouldn't say it's, best in the country kind of defense, but it's a really productive defense, and he gets the best out of them quickly. And then as the time goes, they start playing a lot better. The one thing I noticed, because they talk about the USC days, when I watched Oklahoma and compared it to what they did at USC, they ran a lot of the same stuff, but guys were doing their own thing. That's my opinion. That's just how I saw it from what I understand about, the kind of scheme he runs. It's 3-4 base. But I wouldn't look too much into that, to be honest, because the football is such a hybrid sport now. You have to be able to run everything. You got to be able to put 4 down. You got to be able to go 3 down. You got to be able to, run a lot of DBs and get big if you have to. But just from what I saw when, comparing to USC, they did a lot of stuff to where guys just they had responsibilities and they weren't doing it, which, I've talked about that the whole time. Defense is like the ultimate. It's a lot like O-line. You have to play cohesive and you have to play together. You can't freelance, because if one guy messes up, that's the difference between, a tackle for loss or a sack or a 80-yard touchdown. Like, that's how cohesive and together and being pulled in the same direction. So that's just my opinion. Everybody has their own. I just go off what I see and what I understood from it. And that's what I took away from it, was he has a really good defense. If guys do their job, it can be a very productive defense and guys can make a lot of plays. If they don't, like any other defense, it's going to get shredded most of the time.
Yeah, and we we picked up a few linebackers here over this past week. And we needed some help there. Obviously, it seems like we've talked about that year in and year out. Last year, we thought, from a linebacker perspective, we'd be okay. But when it comes to this year and going into this offseason, we need some help on linebackers, especially if we're going to play a 3-4 defense. You guys, when you were there in 2017 and played a 3-4 defense as well, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And do you think we're going to see similar style as what Coach Chin's had under Grinch? And from what you saw from the tape, was it a similar style of defense in what we're expecting to see?
Yeah, and I think people might think of it as a con. I think you have to be like a perfect match in a sense for what you are expecting on offense. Coach Grinch played, he's from under Chip Kelly's tutelage, like they've worked together closely when he first started. And then they played with Lincoln Riley, who both of those are high-powered offenses. And when you're having a high-powered offense, the best way to feed it is get them the ball back. So he's going to play an aggressive style. I don't know how aggressive, to me, that's personnel dependent. That's who we end up getting, fill out the rest of this class, who stays, who leaves, and what we have going into game one. But I think it'll be similar, just because to me, defense is, it's one thing or another. Now, how you disguise it, how you hide it, that's going to be up to his flavor and what he feels like doing. But it'll be similar because he's paired with Coach Frost. Coach Frost is going to score a lot of points. He wants a defense that reminds him of what he's played with. And a lot of the times when we were there, he referenced his time under Mike Tomlin, his time under Tony Dungy. All those defenses were attacking style defense, get the football back for the offense. And I think that's what you have to do in college football. Offenses are so good nowadays that 10 years ago when we were playing, if you got 1 or 2 turnovers a game, any kind of turnovers or anything, just put them in bad field position. That's what kind of wins you the game against these elite teams. And I think that's what he can bring. But again, we got to see how the rest of the roster shapes out. But if he can get the guys he needs and they do their jobs, I think it'll be very similar similar in the sense of the shells and, 3 down, but it could be different rules, different assignments, the different way they play things.
So one of the things that requires, right, especially if your defense is going to be out on the field a lot, because you guys were out on the field all the time with the 2017 season. So that also requires that you have the depth to be able to rotate. So does it worry you at all of where we are today, or do you think we have time to fill in those holes? We have, I think, as of today, we have 61 guys on the roster that are scholarship guys. There's 3 others that haven't signed yet, but have quote unquote committed. So that would leave roughly 26 scholarships on the table. Mm-hmm. And although we definitely had our focus on offensive line, DB, tight end, and we did get a P4 transfer linebacker today, how much depth do you really need? How many starting caliber linebackers do you need to run a 3-4 effectively? or are you playing like a hybrid DB to make up that fourth lineman?
Yeah, I mean, so 3-4, it's you need depth, period. I mean, and if you want to have an attacking style offense that's scoring points fast, you're going to need depth because, again, when you're going 100, possibly 100 plus plays on defense, you're going to get tired. And the only way to not be tired is to have guys that can come in and spare you a few reps, whether it's 75-25 or it's 60-40. That's kind of how we did it when Coach Frost was first here. You have to have guys that you can trust, and you have to have guys that are capable. That should be easier in the Big 12. It's worrisome just because, again, 60 guys is not ideal, just in general. But, we'll see. I don't know how to truthfully judge it, because, we're past the first signing day, but we're still in the transfer portal. We still have the second signing day where they could possibly find some gems. And we're filling out the roster. I mean, I see the posts all the time of we're filling guys out, and we're signing guys and getting guys to come. It's just pause. We just need to we need to be able to get enough depth to where he's comfortable. The best part about, I say, in the 2017 team and those years, even 2016, we were too deep with quality guys, with NFL caliber guys, with all conference caliber guys. Like, that's what we had as backups. I mean, the first person that I think about 2017 was like Richie Grant and Antoine Collier. A few years later, they were all conference level players, and they showed that, in flashes when they were freshmen. And then you go back to our year, like Kyle Gibson, all conference player. We were backups to other all conference. Like, that's just to be comfortable, to be where you want to be, to where you can rotate guys. I mean, even in the D line, and we talk about later with Coach Dawson, he was probably 3 deep. I mean, at least in his 3 defensive lineman group, he could roll 7 to 8 guys comfortably, and there wouldn't be a significant drop off in production. So I think that's just one of those things where you have to kind of see where we're at come spring ball, because that's where you'll kind of have an idea of where we are, where we need to fill out, where we need to figure out where we need to get to. So things like that. But I think once we're able to get that depth, I mean, then we can get it rolling. But this is under Coach Chins. This isn't under Coach Grinch. I don't know how much he rotates. I don't know how he kind of does his substitution packages. I just kind of understand, a guy like Coach Dawson. I mean, he was turning in 1s, 2s all the time. So.
All right. So while we take a little bit of a breath, the next member of our crew of motley people, we're going to go ahead and bring in UCF football updates, otherwise known as Alan Levin, who's fixed his computer problems from last week. Welcome back, Alan.
Hey, happy to be here. How's it going?
Good, man. Super excited that you made it, and you look pretty suave there. What's going on? You got your hair slicked back. You got a nice shirt on. What's going on there? Every week we see you with a hat on, and
I know. I had a nice mom's birthday, so just came back and rushed home, put the kid to bed, and came for the podcast.
Awesome.
There we go. Dedicated.
All right. So Trey, going back to what we were talking about, right? So one of the things that you can do in a 3-4 is replace some of those linebackers with, athletic safeties or bigger body type of defensive backs. And we went really, really heavy on defensive backs this week. We got 2 defensive backs that we signed this week. What can you replace those guys, those linebackers, with those defensive backs? And if so, what kind of defensive back would we be looking to acquire?
Yeah, I mean, it's so different because you want to tailor your skill guys. You want to tailor who, where you want to fill the roster in, based kind of around what you're going to see. For the longest, the Big 12 was just an air raid, 500, 600, 700 yards a game kind of style of conference. So you wouldn't really want those thumper linebackers in there because they're just going to put them in space. You're going to put an Adrian Killins on a bigger thumper, and it's a mismatch all day. Now it's kind of shifted a little bit. It's still high power, but it's a lot more physical in the Big 12. So you're trying to find guys like I'm blanking right now. What's his name? Pace. Like, Pace is a perfect guy that you would want in this kind of defense because he's physical enough and big enough to play in the box. And as he played linebacker, weak side linebacker this year, but he's so athletic he can cover in space. If you can find those guys everywhere, that's what you want ideally from your inside backers. Outside backers, it just depends on, you want guys that can win. And I think, Nigel Kelly staying is huge. I think he's going to be a huge benefactor in playing in this kind of defense because he's athletic enough to get after the passer, as we've seen, but he's also athletic enough to, drop in coverage. And that's how you can get exotic with your defense. You can send different packages, different blitzes, and have different kind of stunts up front because the thing about the 3-4, you never know where that fourth guy's coming. That's what you're alluding to, the fourth rusher. You never know. It could be an inside backer. It could be a safety. It could be a corner off the edge. It could be a back or outside linebacker. It's so hard to predict where it's coming from versus, 4 down. It's most of the time it's those 4 guys going. That's just reality of it. So yeah, I think there's a certain body type they want. I just think again, it's hard because that signing day's passed, so it's not like the old where you had essentially was December. You had almost a month and a half, 2 months to kind of fill your roster out and find those guys or even flip guys. I think that's one of those things where because we don't have that, a lot of guys have signed. And I don't know how, getting out of the national letter of intent works now. But yeah, it's going to be tough. But I think I think they're going to be able to get those physical guys that can run. If you could get those across the whole defense, that's what you want. Big physical guys that are athletic. And of course, it's easier said than done.
All right, Trey. So there was a question that came from Tim in Florida. He says, question for Trey, what are you doing now career-wise? They said you were in surgery the other night. So can you tell them whether you're wearing scrubs or a nurse's outfit when you're in the surgery?
I'm in scrubs. I help doctors with different multitudes of cases and just kind of assist them with what they want to do. And they use different tools, different equipment, and I kind of help them facilitate that, help them, how would I say it?
You're versatile in a different way now.
What'd you say?
I said you're versatile in a different way now.
Yeah, exactly.
The football field now in the,
doctors, they know exactly what they're doing. The problem is there's so many different instruments and so many different tools that they need to be versed in all of them. They know the surgery is just this scissor might clip different. This might do this different. This rod might use this different. So that's what I help them with. I kind of help them, navigate. Should they do this? Should they not? Ultimately, I just kind of give advice and I get to be in surgery and help people out.
And that's something, just as a quick reminder, thanks, Tim. At the time, part of the reason you went to Nebraska is for the medical track. So, because at the time, we didn't have the resources that we did at the university now. Yeah. So kind of going back to what we were talking about, the difference between a 3-4 and a 4-3, right? Mm-hmm. Are there any advantages in a 3-4 for UCF with the type of offense that we've seen Frost run in the past? And I don't think he's going to run the exact same offense. This is especially a different league. This has been a running league. One of the things that we focused on and emphasized on last year was stopping the run. Can you still stop the run? How do you stop the run with a 3-4 with one less down lineman? We obviously lose Lee this week, right? Because he went to transfer to Texas Tech. They're dropping dollar bags and dump trucks. We kind of hinted at that. So something to the tune of $1.6 million for Lee Hunter, which is not something that we can do here at UCF. That's what the rumored amount was. We kind of hinted around that, but now that it's official, we can talk about it a little bit more. But losing him as a D lineman, we did hold on to another big D lineman on last year's recruit, Walker. Can we hold the fort down with one defensive tackle, and how does that affect the ability to defend the run?
Yeah, I mean, the real difference with the 3-4, they're going to be asked to do the same thing. I mean, the D line is just big nasties, big dirty. You gotta be physical, and you gotta play physical. Techniques change a little bit in the 3 down, for the most part, you got to be able to eat double teams, or a few of them need to be able to eat double teams and keep guys off the linebackers that come free. That's what you want. Now there's so many different varieties. The old school 3-4, like if you were to go Google it, that's like the 1990s version. In 2024, there's so many different ways. There's so many different fronts to get one-on-ones, get different looks you want. It's almost like everything's a hybrid. Everybody's a hybrid because the body types are hybrids. We talk about it, Roger, like when you played, even when I played, like I was a bigger safety. Now everybody's as big as me. If not, they're not bigger than me. Like just the progression of the athlete is getting bigger, faster, stronger, which allows you to do more as well as it's more physical, but it allows you to do more and be more flexible with the defense. So yeah, we'll be able to stop the run. That's going to be more scheme dependent, in my opinion, just based off the type of runs you're probably going to see in the 3-4 and how the guys play the blocks. That's the key to me up front, is how do guys play blocks and how do the linebackers fit off of those guys up front. To me, you have to be sound in this. You have to be a smart football player to play in the 3-4. And you got to be able to tackle. You got to be able to hit. You got to be able to take on offensive linemen, because when you have the 3-4, just looking at any picture, most of the time it's a 0 or 4-eye, which is irrelevant. Just somebody is most of the time the guards are unblocked. There's not going to be anybody over them, which allows them to go straight to the linebackers if they want it. So those linebackers have to be able to be physical at the point of attack, which is something I've harped on just all the time. That's the best way. Ethan Barr, I thought, was pretty good at just being physical at the point of attack. So that's what you're looking for. If we could go get Ethan Barr and Deshaun Pace, find them another year somehow. I mean, everybody else is finding their guys 8 years and 9 years. If we could get another year, that'd be great, just because I think both of them together are a great fit for what this defense that I understood it to be could do.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that Jacoby Jones should pick up his extra year of eligibility this year because the JUCO rules changed. No longer do the 2 years or 1 to 2 years in JUCO count against your eligibility for your 4 years in the NCAA. That rule changed last year. So there's even more guys that can get extra time. We had the COVID year before that we were still shaking out of over the past season. So, you talked a lot about, alignments and stuff. One of the things that four linebackers do for you is it should help you with edge contain. Because you don't have to choose a weak side, strong side when you're playing 4 down linemen, and you can overload one side or the other easily without unmasking what you're doing. Right. So if you've got an end that's defensive end that's crashing down, or sealing a block, you've still got a linebacker that can, or a strong defensive back that can come to that side and overload that side to try to get speed in there to blow up the play. So that's one of the advantages with the 3-4. It'll be really interesting because John Walker was vital to hold on to for this upcoming season. He's coming back from injury, announced today officially that he's going to be back. He's going to be vital for our ability to play over the nose and to maintain the gaps that we need when we're playing a 3-4. So really, really interesting stuff. How much trust do you have in Alex Grinch?
I trust him. Just, again, this is based off what I've seen. I don't know exactly what they're running. I don't know exactly what the defense is going to be. I'm just going off of when he was at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, and then when they made the jump out to USC. I trust it because for me, as just how I've always been as a player, I have to believe in what we're doing in the sense of schematically it makes sense. We're not just out there being cowboys and just, hey, if you see this, we're gonna play this and just jump plays. I don't believe in playing defense like that. I believe in the way you set up your defense. You should be able to stop every base play. You should be gapped out and up front, and you should have everything covered. Now, there's some beaters to everything, of course, but then that's where you rely on the guys. It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes. That's what they always say. But I have to be a guy that I can understand your defense. I see what you're trying to do. I see the mythology behind it. I see what you're trying to take away, what you're trying to attack, and I think when I've watched it, it made sense. I see what they're trying to take away. I see the understanding, the principles you're trying to install. It's just, especially at USC, the guys up front, just for specifically up front, they just weren't doing it, which led to a lot of explosive. I mean, sometimes you'd have 2 or 3 guys in the same gap, on defense, and you have 2 free linemen going up, and guys wouldn't get touched until 15 yards down the field just because D linemen and linebackers and sometimes safeties are getting in the wrong gap. So ultimately,
is that a coaching problem though, from your perspective? I have my own, thoughts on this, and I'm trying to lean into this with you because you played this defense at UCF under Coach Scottfrost, and I'm trying to understand that. And then the other thing too that I'd like for you to kind of answer is as it pertains to Coach Frost, is there anything different in the sense that, one, he was, I know that he was a little bit active on the defensive side of the ball, considering he coached defense before he came to UCF. Was there any difference do you feel, in him being the leader of this team and running that type of defense and having any input into what Coach Grinch is doing?
Yeah. So first thing, I think some things can be coaching. I think you can fix things with coaching. I believe that heartfully. I think some things are player issues as well that you might not see it, watching the TV copies, but when you get, I always try to watch the games after, and that's where I watch guys and players, and you can see a lot of issues with that. Like, that's where I notice if it's players' fault or if it's team fault. So I think it's both. I think just the 3-4 in general is a more aggressive style because, again, like I said earlier, you don't really know where that fourth rusher's coming.
Well, it's predicated on turnovers.
Correct.
That's what it is. And for high-powered offenses, when you're running a 3-4, you're trying to get the ball back into the hands of the offense, right?
Correct.
And so the 3-4 gives you a little bit of flexibility on disguising some of the stuff that you're doing to try to get those turnovers. So
that leads to, it can lead to splash plays, which in the past we've seen that happen a lot, but it also can lead to, big plays for the offense, and I think that ultimately is going to be what Coach Frost has to decide he wants to. It's a give and take, If you don't want to give up these big plays, we're going to have to be a lot more, where we talk about O'Leary style, bend, don't break, be good in the red zone, be good on third down. That's one way to play it, but you can't go out there and try that, 15-second, 20-second high-speed offense because the reps are going to start looking very lopsided. If we're playing bend, don't break, and we're out there 10, 15 plays a drive, and you go out there and you're out there for 4 or 5 plays, you score a touchdown, but it's only a minute's gone off the clock. That's going to wear on you, especially if we don't have the depth to do it. So I think it's going to be a lot of give and take with him. And to answer your second question, Coach Frost has a lot of input, and I don't know if people know he was drafted to the National Football League as a safety. He played in the highest level at safety, so he has a lot of experience. He started off his coaching career as a defensive coach, and then he transitioned to offense later. So he knows exactly what to look for. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's seeing. So to try to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Coach, that won't fly because he knows what everybody's doing. He's a super smart guy. He knows what everybody is supposed to do and what they're doing. I just think what he's looking for is going to be he wants you to, the no fear of failure was huge for me, and I think a lot of those guys. He wants you to go try to make plays. I know that's one thing that we have a gripe with our DBs is turn around and make a play on the football. You're in the perfect position. You're in the perfect spot. Make a play. Or same thing with the linebackers up front. You see the gap open up. Go make the play. That's the only place the running back can go. Go make the play. Don't be scared to, if I do this. Once you start thinking, that's when, you're a half step behind, and that's a touchdown. So I think that's what he's going to be more so looking for. I know early on he's going to, let the defensive guys build that relationship and just let them do their thing. But I know once they get, we get into the nitty gritty of the season, he's going to have his input, and he's going to be like, look, we're good at this. I don't like that we run this, so stop running it. I want to run this. If we're going to be more aggressive, I can't tell you how many times he would be like, smoke them. Like, clutch moments, Coach Frost is like, send the dogs. Like, listen, you guys are from Florida. You guys are DBs. You don't want to play on Sundays, go cover them man to man. Like, that's where we made our money was. We sent the house, we got to cover. That's what we're paid to do. So he'll definitely have his input on that. So yeah, that'll answer that second.
Well, the interesting thing you mentioned there, we tried to go fast last year, but we had a lot of opportunities where we were good between the 20s, but we couldn't finish in the red zone. There were times because of the quarterback situation, we weren't good on third downs. So if we're going to have situations like that, like we did last year, where we have guys and a defense that's going to be on the field longer, I'd rather us be confident in the ability to score and still be able to do that. And that does affect the numbers. We talked about the efficiency of a defense having to be measured differently when you have a fast-paced offense that scores a lot, right? Yep. We have Coach Frost and his offenses does a lot of things the same way to set up or bait a defense or lull a defense into sleep and then go for a big play that's going to go for big yards versus this dink and dunk type of offense that a lot of people have. And we kind of had the same thing last year. The difference was we just didn't score. So when we start evaluating these defenses, especially if Frost does go faster pace, if he does bring some of those elements of UCFast back, you cannot measure those defenses the same way you would a traditional defense as far as efficiency ratings are concerned. So that's something that I want Knight Nation to kind of be thinking about as we next year start to see this unfold. Obviously, the system won't be fully in place. It'll take a bit. We've got moving pieces in and out with the portal and having lost a bunch of guys this year. So that's going to take some adjustments as well. But as you're looking at our style of play on defense, make sure that you understand, we talk a lot about complementary football, that the traditional efficiency metrics are not going to be the same.
Yep. I mean, I'm looking at, 2016 stats, 2017 stats. We were 40th out of 120, which that's top third in the country, and then 52nd out of 130 points per game. Which, you're like, okay, that's an average defense. But when you pair that with the number one defense, and then you see both of those years we were top 3, top 5 in turnovers, top 3 to 5 to 10 in negative plays that we created. That's the kind of thing you want to see when you pair with a high-powered offense. You want to see those high turnover teams and create negative plays because, again, Roger, 2nd and 7 is a whole lot different than 2nd and 13. A turnover, 2 turnovers a game, and now you go from 7-0 to 21-0 like a blink of the eye. That can throw out the whole offense's playbook. Like, okay, we're playing from behind, way behind now the whole game, which that makes you one-dimensional, which that's what we wanted. We want you guys to feel so much pressure offensively to just throw the ball all game, which, that'll happen. But if you do that, we know what to expect. We let Shaquem Griffin tee off, Nigel Kelly. We let Tristan Hill and who's John Walker. We let the big dogs go hunt. That's what you do. And I think that's what you need to start. I think we need to look at more. If people are big stats and analytics people, don't look at the points per game, because when teams score a lot of points, that means the other teams get the possessions a lot too. So.
Yeah, and that's a stark contrast to George O'Leary type of defenses and the way he wanted to play a strategy, right? So real quick, one last thing for me on Coach Grinch that I kind of wanted to talk about. There's a lot of noise out there on the internet, especially for fan bases of where he came from, about the defenses being soft, questions about whether they are tackling and all of that kind of stuff. So when you went back and looked at that tape, did you see anything that kind of threw alarm bells that said, hey, these guys aren't tackling well, their fundamentals are off on their tackling fundamentals, etc. What did you see when it came to that when you look back at the tape?
Yeah, they definitely didn't tackle the best. I don't know. So to me, there at USC particularly, he had a lot of talent on that defense, like guys that they are playing on Sundays right now. but you watch them play on Sundays, they still miss a lot of tackles, and they still aren't the most physical players. I specifically the back end. They have a great ball skills. They make plays on the ball, which is what I saw a lot, especially their safeties, and a couple of their corners as well. But I think a little bit of that is just players being afraid. But they're just some of those guys don't want to tackle and they can't tackle, but they're so talented in coverage that it's like you have to put them on the field because in the Pac-12 specifically, that's the new Big 12. Like they throw the football all over the place. I mean, it's ridiculous. But it's hard to me to say because I think physicality isn't taught. Like I don't think a coach can make a player want to hit somebody, want to be violent, want to be physical. It's either you are a physical football player or you're not a physical football player. I don't think coaching can make you do that. I think there's technique things like the missed tackles. I'm sure those technique things can be cleaned up. And I know Coach Frost, again, he's the one that was instrumental in the kind of tackling he wanted to see. So if there was that, Coach Frost would not let that happen if he sees something wrong with the technique. Just on his end, because, again, the man was drafted as a safety to play in the National Football League. And he played in that. Like, he did it. So he knows what proper technique is. He knows, and he was taught under, some guys that are still in the NFL now. So he understands it. So that's what worries me a little, but not too much because, again, I know what Coach Frost wants. I know what Coach Dawson wants. I know what some of those guys are going to want up front and what they are looking for. So I know Coach Grinch, he's going to buy in, and they're going to clean it up if they have it. So,
all right, Alan, I know I've been asking a lot of questions of Trey. What's your thoughts on the hire of Coach Grinch? Concerns, thoughts, and anything that Trey was talking about there? Any questions you have for Trey?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I saw I don't know if you guys addressed this, but the backlash that happened, like essentially you saw, the tweets get released by the national reporters, and you saw a bunch of former USC, Oklahoma fans kind of rip it. And then you saw a bunch of Knight Nation kind of coming behind that and saying, what are we doing here? I didn't see the cause for freak out. I know his time at USC at the end was kind of marred. I saw a stat that his last year there, they gave up the most points they've ever had in the history of the program. So obviously that's going to get you a bad rap. But when you look at the entirety of his career, and first of all, he's still pretty young. He's in his mid 40s. He's had stints at Ohio State, Oklahoma, USC. We're talking major blue blood programs that have hired him over and over. This is not the same, as our DC this year, who had essentially 1 year stints at every single school in the country. I mean, this guy is being hired by top programs. And you look at his time at Washington State, Wisconsin, some of these other places, he had some really good numbers. I mean, he's a 4-time Broyles award nominee. So while I understand it's kind of what have you done for me lately, and his most recent employment didn't go well to the point that he obviously got fired. Overall, I think the body of his work is pretty solid. And you talk about a guy that's a veteran coordinator that's played some major ball games. I mean, he made the playoffs with Oklahoma. He played in the Rose Bowl, I think, with Ohio State. So this is a guy that knows Power 4 football. And like I said, has played at coached at major programs, coached guys that have been in the NFL. So while I understand some of the concern, given how his last stint ended, I overall, I think it was a strong hire, and it was outside of the Frost, Nebraska, UCF bubble, which we talked about last week. We kind of wanted to at least see maybe a couple hires in that realm. So overall, I'm kind of let's wait and see. I was much more concerned with the Ted Roof hire last year compared to this one. I think this guy has a much better track record, and overall, I'm willing to give it a chance. So I don't have too many concerns. I mean, one really bad year at USC I don't think overlooks the entirety of his career, which to this point has been pretty solid.
All right. So there's a question here from Ray. Ray says, have you guys heard about any other QBs that we are looking at since Bo headed to Mizzou after you are done addressing Grinch? So we are done with Grinch. That's one of the coaching hires and retention that we have to keep. So there's a lot more to come from that. I wanted to get Trey's opinion on a lot of this stuff because, defensively, he wasn't here last week to talk about the defense, and we're starting to ramp that up. But have you heard about any other QBs that we're looking at now other than the one Fancher from FAU that we brought in this week?
I haven't. I saw one tweet earlier today. There was someone that we were potentially looking at, but as far as visits, it was only the former Penn State, and we just saw he got, I think, 1.75 million. So honestly, for pure depth purposes, you do probably need to sign one more scholarship QB, given that we only have 3 right now. Last year we were walking with 5. So you would think one more needs to happen. But I think personally, I think we saw the downside of investing a ton of money on a transfer quarterback last year and how it bit us in the butt. So I'd rather, at this point, I think between Risk and Brown, you have your starting quarterback on the roster. So I'd rather go get one guy that's in the cheaper area.
Do we have our starting quarterback on the roster?
We do. You could be right. Look, we may not, but was matching the 1.7 million for a guy that hasn't played a snap yet the move? I don't think so.
Listen, we can't.
We can't. I'm just saying, even if we could, I don't see that to be the smartest financial investment. If anything, I'd rather risk what we did with KJ again last year, go get a guy that's proven it and hope it works out this time. I know it didn't with KJ, but that doesn't mean it can't with another quarterback. So if the quarterback's not on the roster, I know Frost is looking. There's no way that they're going to roll into the season with 3 scholarship quarterbacks. I mean, if you look back the past 5 years, every single year we've had a minimum of 4. So there's no way they're not going to look. I just don't think you blow the entire budget. And I don't know the exact number, what that number should be or whatever we can afford. I'd rather fill out the rest of the roster with depth pieces. And I think that Risk or Brown could develop to be that number 1 guy. Those out there, they're trying to chase our Mackenzie Melton. I just don't see that happening. A, because we don't have enough money, and B, the portal season is getting later and later, where most of the top guys have already, committed elsewhere. And yeah, you're going to have guys after the spring game transfer. Those aren't going to be the clear-cut starters. They're going to be backups and things like that. So if you look at the available pool now until the season starts, is it really going to be that much appreciably better than Risk, for example, that has actual starting experience that fits into Frost offense? Maybe, but are we going to be able to afford those guys? Maybe not. So I don't know that name right now, but there's going to be another pool of names that open up as we get into March and spring ball.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm thinking about quarterbacks, right? So the big challenge for me with the quarterback situation is this. It's cost. Even the guy from Tulane, I can't remember his name. Oh gosh, what's his name? He was the
most recent quarterback, or one that transferred out?
Yeah, the one that transferred out.
Yeah, the one that transferred out. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, he just landed somewhere, right? He landed at a Power 5, I believe.
He did, and he got paid somewhere around $600,000 to $800,000 just.
He started though, at least at least he had that experience.
Yeah, but now
he's a good team.
Now, you think about what our situation was. We paid a lot for us for KJ Jefferson, and that's $450,000 to $500,000. So when you start shopping around there, you're looking at lower level, promising G5 quarterbacks that are going to come in, or quarterbacks that are sitting somewhere that are not going to get a chance to shine and haven't played, right? So that's kind of the available pool, and right now it's slim pickings. So no other quarterbacks to kind of speak of. Ray says that Frost, KZ, and Cooper can develop our young guys. Dylan gives KZ quite a bit of credit for his success. I agree with that point, but the expectation for this team, I think they have the advantage of not having expectations like they did in the past. And so, we may get that time to be able to do that where we didn't in the past. But again, if they do develop, if Dylan Risk does come out, then you still run the risk of him going somewhere else because the amount the amounts that we're talking about are ridiculously high versus what UCF can pay right now. And again, we're still in a financial position where we will not see a full payout from the Big 12 until not the end of this athletic year, which is June, but the end of the following athletic year, which is next June. So just something to think about there.
Did we just bring it back on risk? I mean, given everything you just said, which is spot on, I mean, that we wouldn't really be in a position to get one of these big names. I feel like there's been like a lot of hesitation with risk about next year. I mean, he already announced he's coming back. Is there any reason why he doesn't deserve a chance? I mean, I still think, I know it's not saying much, but he still looked best out of any quarterback we threw out this season. Is there any reason why he couldn't be the guy? I mean, I thought he showed enough to at least for the opportunity.
I mean, he's going to get the opportunity no matter what. He's on the roster, right? So, he's going to get the opportunity to compete for it. I don't know what he looks like in practice, but what I can tell you is, yes, he looked good for a couple of games, right? Then you have the one game where he just looked completely lost, the last game that we played against Utah, right? So he's still a young quarterback, right? Did we see KZ magic out of Dylan Risk? I don't think so. I mean,
but he can take a leap, though. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that sophomore jump that they talk about, right? For people, right? And I do expect him to be better next year. However, is he going to take the type of leap that we're used to? Probably not. So if you can go find a quarterback, or not used to, but what we think about when you're thinking about KZ as the quarterback coach, and that's going to be the comparison, fair or not, right? Do you have to take a shot at trying to get another quarterback? Yeah. And if there's another quarterback on the roster besides the three that are on there today, I think you absolutely 100% have to think that we're going to try to get someone who at the very least could be better than Risk. Will he get a shot at it? Yeah, 100%. Listen, Dylan Risk also got paid to stay. And if you don't think he didn't get paid to stay, yes, he did it out of the goodness of his heart, but at the end of the day, he, to me, hasn't proven that he can be that quarterback yet. I hope he does. But I remember when we were watching the likes of, Dylan Gabriel or Mackenzie Milton, those were high-level quarterbacks with high-level quarterback play, especially you knew what you were getting out of Dylan Gabriel, too, with the type of numbers he put up in Hawaii. Dylan Risk, I don't think, is that caliber of quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but he's not that caliber. So it's going to take longer if we have the learning curve. And do I think that we need to keep playing magical or musical chairs with quarterbacks? No. Do I think that we mismanage the quarterback situation under Gus Malzahn? Yes. But Gus Malzahn is not here anymore, right? So that doesn't mean that the guys that we have on the roster are the same quality of the guys that left. So I don't know, for Dylan Risk, he showed some flashes. I think he's got the possibility, but he also showed that, when you're staring down the barrel of a Big 12 defense that's basically bringing the house, he played like a freshman would. So he did not have a good game. And, it is what it is. Andrew's checking in, says, hopefully KZ can give him some of that magic dust. 100% agree. I hope so too. And Ray, I hope that doesn't sound too down on Risk. It's not that I'm down on Risk. I just think that, we need to see if there's anybody else that we can bring to the table. And yes, maybe there are some ninja QBs in Hawaii that maybe KZ can reestablish that pipeline, because Frost had a pipeline to Hawaii as well when he was there the last time. All right, let's go ahead and pivot back to what we were talking about before. Pivot. Kenny Martin retained as defensive tackle coach. We talked about Kenny Martin quite a bit over the last two shows. I think it's extremely important that we retained Kenny Martin. One, for John Walker. I think he had something to do with John Walker staying. Two, for continuity. Three, for his recruiting prowess. We talked about a lot about that. He made a lot of inroads and was really, really, really well liked on the recruiting trail. So maintaining those inroads into those high schools as we put a fence around Florida was extremely important. What are your thoughts on keeping Kenny Martin?
Yeah, that was huge. I think we talked about, out of all the coaches that we wanted to keep, at least on the defensive side of the ball, we said we need to keep one of the Kennys. And I think Kenny Martin was the one that was probably the most important, I think just him being able to keep, or having a reason that John Walker stays, makes him already worth his salary. Literally, for one player, that was someone that I think widely we expected to lose. We talked about John Walker probably transferring. The fact that he stayed, if Kenny Martin even had, a small hand in that, that's big. But for continuity purposes, as of now, really the only coaches that have stayed are that have been retained are Kenny Martin, and I guess you could say obviously Sean Beckton, but I almost don't consider that retaining, just because he was already part of Frost's two other staffs in Nebraska at UCF. So when you talk about having at least some continuity, that's big. And Kenny Martin, like you said, was widely liked. He's a player's coach. He's a great recruiter. Had a hand in recruiting some of our top defensive lineman players over the past few years, like John Walker and Ricky Barber and Lee Hunter. So him being retained on the staff is big. You can tell a lot of the players were already excited about it. They were tweeting about it when he returned. So I'm thrilled with that move. And I think like you said, it was a big reason that John Walker stayed, and a big reason where I don't really think you've seen too many outside of Lee Hunter, which we already talked about. He got a massive bag. Most of the D linemen have stayed. Malachi Lawrence is still here. John Walker is still here. Jamal Johnson came back, withdrew his name after Kenny was retained. So you talk about that. A lot of the key linemen from last year are back, and it's actually one of the few position groups I feel pretty good about heading into next year. I mean, obviously Lee Hunter's a big loss, but I think we were kind of already considering that a loss when we all thought we all said, I remember at the beginning, one of the first podcasts before the season started, that we thought he was going pro. So we kind of already figured that was a loss. So I love that Martin was retained.
All right. I'm going to kind of punt on Mike Dawson, because this is someone that Trey worked with extensively. So I want him to kind of give his flavor. And unfortunately, he's taken an extended potty break. So yes, Trey, I'm calling you out.
We can circle back
on that. So we'll circle back to that. Andrew says we should send him the notes. Well, that's on Alan. Alan didn't send him to Andrew, although I did send Andrew the link. There's Trey tweeting from the bathroom. Wow. Nice. Yes, you got called out, dude. You got called out on the show. All right.
What a listener, listening while on the toilet.
Yeah, well, we'd all do that. It's for the brand, bro. Sean Clark has been hired as offensive line coach. He was the head coach at App State for 2 years. He was also an offensive line coach, well-respected offensive line coach for 15 years prior to that. So this guy, having looked at his history, this was a really, really good hire. And you started to see some pretty high-level offensive line transfers come into UCF this week, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But what do you think of this hire?
Yeah, I don't know much about him, I'll be honest, other than, he was the coach at App State. But I think anytime you can get a former head coach as one of your position coaches, that's kind of a win. I mean, I know this is an extreme example, but how many coaches has Nick Saban hired at Alabama that were former head coaches, and the quote unquote Nick Saban rehab program. I don't know if that's what the case is here, but a guy with this type of experience at App State that's been largely successful since they've moved up from FCS to FBS. I think it's a great hire. And offensive line is going to be, it already is undergoing a major makeover. I mean, almost every single starter is gone outside of Paul Rubelt, and we just saw in the last 3 days alone 4 new offensive linemen have transferred into UCF. So his the ability for him to develop O-line and get them to gel quickly is going to be big. So I think a guy with that type of experience, has been a head coach, been an O-line coach in the past, is actually, I think this is probably one of the best hires so far. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this guy is a 2-time All-American offensive line player. He was an all-conference selection. You know, he's got a lot of big names that he's coached under. He was with he was at Louisville. He was at Purdue as offensive line coach. Obviously at App State, he was co-OC and offensive line coach. He was with Scott Satterfield and Eli Drinkowitz. So some pretty big names. And, from that perspective, he's well known. He's well liked. He was, I wouldn't say former head coach. He was the head coach, and we hired him away from App State. So I think that's a bold move there too. The fact that UCF is now in a position to be able to hire a sitting head coach away from a quote unquote G5 program to bring him to UCF is pretty awesome. He was 40-24 as a head coach and 3-1 in bowl games. So this guy is not, it's not one of these retread coaches. This guy had an upward mobility as far as his career was concerned. It's also another guy that Scottfrost can lean on. He was extremely successful as a head coach. 40-24 is at App State is really, really good. And more importantly, 3-1 in bowls. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. That's a winning pedigree. This guy knows how to win. He knows how to get the most out of his players. And, he's a great, great coach coming from a winning pedigree. And I think this is a huge, huge win for us and an upgrade over, as much as we love the cooking of and personality of our previous O-line coach. I think this is an upgrade and a guy that knows how to win and has done it. He's done it himself. He at a very, very high level. So I think this is huge. I think it's being reflected in what you're seeing with the transfers that we have coming in this week on offensive line. And I think this is going to be another asset for Coach Frost. We talked about Coop last week, for Coach Frost to lean on as he builds out his staff and continues to focus on all of the things that a head coach needs to. It's a stark difference, I think, from what we saw under Coach Malzahn. So I think this is definitely a big thing, and not a guy that he's worked with in the past. So again, one of the big knocks on Coach Malzahn was he brought his own entourage with him everywhere he went. He hired from within his guys. And I think what Coach Frost has done successfully now, which I was a little worried about the hires that he was bringing in, is he's brought a couple of pieces from outside of the program that he has not worked with before that can add value to him, not only in their position, but also as a coach to help him on the field. So that's my big thing. I think this is the number one big hire that we have. Mike Dawson hired as an edge. That was the end of the coaches. So I guess we need to circle back to Mike Dawson, and we'll get Trey's input in a bit. Mike Dawson was hired as edge run game coordinator. He was the former linebackers coach for UCF during the 2017 era. He was kind of much maligned during that time. So that's an interesting hire, to say the least. And look who joined us.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Andrew Fagley from the comments to the show. Welcome to the show, and thank you for picking up the slack for Trey.
Well, I didn't realize I was gonna do this, but
whatever. We're glad to have you.
It's all good. Thank you.
Let's talk. I mean, any thoughts on the hire of Mike Dawson as edge / run game coordinator?
I'm fine with everybody that he's hired so far. I mean, I just want to see the product on the field. That's what I'm really worried about. That's just that's what I want to see. I I don't know. I can't. The one thing with the defensive coordinator or whatever, that really bothered me that fans like just went freaking nuts on that situation. That doesn't need to happen. Like, give people a chance, but
I agree.
To like see what they're gonna do. Like, not everybody's gonna be like at the place where they were before or whatever. You know, people learn, people live, they learn. Like, it's horrible. I think the bashing that goes on a lot of different things. I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here, but that bothered me a lot to see the comments that people had on that guy, but before even seeing a single snap or whatever, you know, like, it's just crazy.
What do you think, Alan, about Mike Dawson and the hire for him?
Well, it's like you said, I think in his first go around at UCF, yeah, he wasn't the most loved coach, but I mean, it's kind of a balancing act, right? I think that you want to see Frost hire guys outside of his circle, but at the same time, what coach doesn't? It's not just Malzahn that hires coaches within his circle. That's pretty much every coach to some degree. So as far as it pertains to Dawson, though, I kind of, with you, Andrew, it's just like, you got to give these guys a chance. And I know we've seen Dawson, to a degree already. Was with
he
us
didn't
for
do
2
horrible
years.
when he was here. So
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, he did well with the linebackers. I mean, that was Shaquem Griffin, and you had other Eric Gilliard, and some of these other guys. Was it Troy Davis? I don't know if that was on that team, but a lot of linebackers on that team were pretty strong. And yeah, like you said, they didn't do bad. So I'm fine with this hire. I mean, look, if we're already going to bring back some of that 2017 magic, hell, bring one more coach in.
Well, I think for me, I think it's interesting that he brought him in as edge run and run game coordinator. Now, run game coordinator, not offensive run game coordinator, defensive run game coordinator. I think it's I think that's interesting considering we'll be playing a 3-4 defense, right? So the linebackers, we talked a lot about that at the top of the show, that they'll be an integral part of that. So I imagine he's still going to work with the linebackers, but the fact that he's just going to be focusing on the run game is going to be interesting, and the fact that he's concentrating on the edges is also interesting. So that I think speaks to the 3-4, because one of the advantages that you have, like we said earlier, was that you have edge contain, which we did not early on in the season. We didn't do a really good job. We did a much better job of that later on in the season. So I think, Mike Dawson knows him. I think Coach Frost is kind of keeping him specific on one particular area. And I think that's good. We'll see how it shakes out. But, that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. All right. I guess, what do UCF still needs to hire a running backs coach, tight end coach, linebacker coach, cornerback, defensive back coach, strength coach, and special teams coach. Brian Blackman was not retained, which I don't think anybody is crying about that one. I mean, he was a good recruiter, but I mean, our special teams were a mess. We lost games literally this year because of that. And I think also multiple games, I would say, we lost because of that. And I think that's part of the reason why Gus Malzahn's out of a job. I mean, if we would have picked up another 3 or 4 wins, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But that's how the cookie crumbles. So it'll be interesting to see, now that we have a defensive coordinator, how they fill out that staff, who they bring in to do that. But I do think, just like a lot of these roles, they already know who they're going to hire. It's just a matter of negotiating contracts. Because remember, folks, we still have to negotiate contracts even if you get a verbal acceptance. So when we start seeing linebackers sign, when we start seeing defensive backs sign, when we start seeing these folks come on board, they're not, as Trey said last week, they're not going to sign with a position coach that they don't know who it is. They're just not going to do it. So every time you see a defensive back or a linebacker or anything jump on there, or any of those positions that we just talked about, they already know who their coordinator is. They're pretty far down that pipe, but they're probably just negotiating the deal. So Coach Henshaw did go to Purdue. He also brought a couple of quarterbacks with him, including E.J. Colson. Sad to see him go, but especially with him being a UCF alum. I liked him when he was here, as how he did how he handled coordinator duties, as far as the conversation in front of the media and handling the media and being transparent. But it is what it is. Any other thoughts on Coach Henshaw leaving?
Well, with players or coaches, you can't take it personal. It's business, So, you can't take any of it personal anymore, with players, especially if he takes a quarterback or whatever, So it just is what it is. College football is completely a different thing now.
Yeah, I think, Alan, did you have anything to add about Coach Henshaw?
Not really. I mean, it is upsetting to lose him because, like you said, he's a UCF legend. But I also don't think he really ever got a true fair shake as the OC or QB coach or otherwise. Exactly. It would have been nice. It would have been nice to retain him, but once KZ became QB coach and we hired an OC, I'm not really sure he's not going to be an offensive game analyst, especially if he's getting offers, to be a position coach elsewhere. So we'll see. Maybe it'll work out again in the future.
All right. So let's go ahead and pivot again, and let's get to the new additions to UCF's roster. Quite a bit of activity this week, along with the coaching staff. We also the portal opens wide for new Knights. Oh boy. So we added quite a few new transfers. So Alan, why don't you? I know you've kind of been keeping an eye on this as to who we're adding, when we're adding them. Where they're transferring from. Quite a few P4s on here, schools like Washington, West Virginia. Memphis was good this year, so getting someone from there is good. Ole Miss, UNC, Maryland, and Oklahoma. And, more Maryland on the way is what I'm hearing as well. So what did you see out of these groupings, and can you tell us a little bit about all of these guys?
Yeah, so overall, UCF added 10 new guys really in the last 3 days. So right now we're at 12 total commits. That would be 7 on offense, 5 on defense. Right now, the most prevalent positions are offensive line. We have 4 DB. There's 3, so that makes up 7 of the 12 transfers. Conference-wise, it's 7 from the P4, 4 from the G5, and 1 from Division II. Right now, there's 3 from the Big 10, 1 from the Big 12, 1 from the SEC, 1 from the ACC, and then 3 from the American, our old conference. Overall, it's all solid. I wouldn't say any of these name-wise are as flashy as maybe some of the transfers we had last year. The quote unquote booms. But I think what they are is they're filling voids that we have on the team. As you could tell, offensive line was a major focus of this, as well as defensive back, 2 positions where we lost a lot of depth. But to just kind of go down the list here. So since last time we spoke, the first one that we got was a Washington offensive line transfer. And I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how to pronounce either his first or his last name, Gard Memolar or something like that. But this is a guy who's a project over at Washington. He was there for 2 years, really didn't play much those first couple of years, but then last year played in, I think it was every single game last year, both on offensive line, started a few games, but he's considered more of a project and has 2 years of eligibility remaining. But this is, a really big guy. Just pure size wise, and that's you start to notice then these offensive line recruits that Frost has got from the portal. This guy was 6'4", 315 pounds. Actually only has 1 year of eligibility left. Was a number 1 ranked prospect in Idaho back in the 2020 class. But like I said, he's been kind of a project at Washington. He missed the entire 2023 season due to injury, and then last year got some starts. Then we saw the QB transfer, Cam Fancher. He's a guy that started out his career at Marshall and then played at FAU last year. While it's not the flashiest name, he has a lot of experience. He played, started 2 years at Marshall and then started sparingly last year at FAU. His statistics aren't the best. He threw for 6 TDs and 6 picks last year. But, I think, this is probably our third string, at best, maybe a second string. But this guy, at the end of the day, has a ton of experience. He came out of Ohio, Dayton, out of high school. Wasn't super highly recruited. Mostly had G5 offers. But once again, a guy with essentially 3 years of starting QB experience would actually be more experience than any QB on our current roster. So never a bad thing to get another scholarship QB on the roster when we had lost 3 at the end of this season. Coming in next after that was Isaiah Reed. This is a guy as an Ivy League transfer, played at Brown, essentially, racked up award after award after award at Brown, was first team all Ivy League this past year. Someone that, played a lot of minutes at Brown, and is actually a Florida guy, played at Seffner Christian, who's got a pretty good program out in Tampa. Once again, might be a bit of a project, but we've seen UCF do really well, actually, even last season, like guys with that came over from the FCS that played some serious minutes for us. So I think this is a guy that could be well. He finished his Brown career with 114 tackles, 20 pass breakups, and 7 picks. Actually led all of the Ivy League in interceptions last season. So he was very, very productive. A little bit small, 5'11", 180, but guy that looks like he has some good length, and a guy that is a ball hawk. So could be an interesting pickup. Next was another DB, DJ Bell, from our ex-rivals over at Memphis. This is a guy that also played pretty decent amount of minutes over the past couple of years, played in 15 games, had 36 tackles, 8 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. Also had a pick 6. He was a 3-star that was also out of Florida, played at Pensacola High. Had not many not many Power 4 offers coming out of high school, but overall has had a productive career at Memphis. He's 6'2", 180 pounds, and was a 3-star prospect. So this is a guy that, Memphis has been pretty good the last couple of years, and he's been a pretty significant piece of their secondary. I wouldn't call him like one of the focal points, but he was someone that played, had a few starts under his belt and played a decent amount. Next, you'll probably remember this name, wide receiver Rick Darius, aka Day Farmer. He was a guy that was originally committed to UCF's 2024 class, but ultimately flipped on signing day last year to West Virginia. A guy that we all wanted. He was a former, he is a 4-star prospect out of that 2024 class. Was a top 60 wide receiver in the nation and a top 55 player in the state of Florida. Had an offer essentially from every big school in the country. So he comes to us basically a year later after flipping away from us. He played very little last year and only ended up with 6 catches and 55 yards last year. But, given all of the wide receiver depth we lost, I think this is another young, solid pickup for UCF and someone we wanted last year, a guy with a ton of speed and a ton of potential. Well,
before you move on, like one thing I want to bring up is he comes from the Coco program, right? And he also played with Javon Boggs. Since we lost Javon Boggs, the way I read somewhere that basically the way to think about these two as far as body type is concerned, Javon Boggs was rated higher. Javon Boggs was more like a Gabe Davis type of receiver versus, Day, which is more like a Javon that we had last year kind of receiver, right? So he's a faster receiver. He's going to be someone that moves a little bit faster. Slighter build. But, I think all in all, this is someone who will be a good producer for us as well.
I agree. Probably needs to gain a little size. He's only 170 pounds, 5'10", but, could be kind of that Dredrick Snelson, maybe slot type of guy. Next is another offensive lineman, Preston Cushman. Big guy, also 6'5", 305 pounds. He played at Ole Miss really for the last 3 years. So he's been a solid player for them. Played in quite a few games, mostly as a reserve though, but does have a good amount of experience. Another Florida kid that is once again coming back home. He played at Calvary Christian, which is over in Clearwater. Had quite a few offers coming out of high school. Wouldn't call him a development project, but someone that was not a key starter for Ole Miss, but did play a good amount, at least in was rotated in. He's also considered very versatile. Looks like he can play left guard, right guard, and left tackle. So he does have some versatility, which is probably something we need with the amount of offensive linemen we lost. And was rated as a top 140 recruit in the state of Florida coming out of high school. Next up is another offensive lineman, Jakaya Leftwich. He transfers over from UNC. He actually started his career at Georgia Tech, where he played a pretty significant amount of reps at Georgia Tech for 2 seasons, but then transferred over to UNC this past season, where he got 8 starts this past year. So I guess it was a pretty significant part of their offensive line. This is a 5th-year senior type of guy out of in Trey's neck of the woods, out of Georgia. Played at Westlake High in Atlanta. They have a great program. Out of high school, he was a top 100 recruit in the Peach State, 3-star guy. And, probably out of the guys that we got, probably has the most starting experience out of any of the offensive linemen that we signed in the last couple of days. Size-wise, he is 6'6", 300 pounds. So if you're seeing a kind of trend here, pretty much every O-line we signed today was 6'5", 300 and over. So some big boys up front.
That was exactly what I was going to comment on. Sorry to interrupt, but all these guys are big guys except for those 2 fast wide receivers. You can see that Scottfrost, and these guys can move too. If you go look at some of their tape, there's big guys, but they can still move, and Scottfrost needs that in his offense. I'm glad he's starting 100%. With these big offensive linemen doing, big guys. So.
Yeah, I think you're kind of noticing like a trend here with who Frost is going after. So yeah.
Well, remember his linemen in the 2017 years, they were tall, skinnier guys, right? But these guys can't
do that in the Big 12.
Yeah, exactly. Not against the defenses. We saw that, what Utah can bring to the table, and they did not perform well this year, severely underperformed this year, just like we did. But they still had some massive beef on the D line. So we need guys like that. But the fact that you mentioned that they can move when you watch the tape, remember, Frost's previous offenses all wanted that O-line to get to the second level.
Yeah, had to.
And
that's part of the whole thing. That's when you spread out the field, you have to have that line that can protect your quarterback and take care of everything that's going on there too, because they try to do all kinds of crazy stuff because you're spreading them out.
Yeah. And it's important in the run game too, right? Is to establish that second line of scrimmage, and that's something that's going to be extremely important. So having guys that are bigger, right, and that can still move that way is going to be extremely important for the success of this offense. So especially on O-line. These are some pretty good pickups that we've seen thus far, and we've got more to come. So, Alan?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So next up was Dylan Wade, aka D Wade. This is another Florida kid that's coming home. Was a Maryland player for the last couple of years. Actually played at nearby Jones High after transferring over from Ocoee. So 2 pretty big Central Florida staples. This guy's a multi-sport athlete, played basketball and football in high school, and is really versatile. Played edge, played tight end, and played quarterback when he was in high school. Obviously at Maryland, he was a tight end, which obviously became a position of need for UCF once Randy Pittman transferred to Florida State. But another big guy, 6'4", 240 pounds. Was considered a top 25 athlete in the country coming out of high school. So I think this is a really big pickup, and was pretty productive over at Maryland this last year, had a career high 375 yards to go along with, I think it was 29 catches and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely, was a player there at Maryland. And I think this is, one of the better offensive pickups that we've gotten. So he was out of the 2023 class. So we'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. And someone that also had a lot of Power 5 offers, coming out of high school. So I think this is, he's an athlete, a guy that can play defensive end, tight end, quarterback. This is a guy that we want on our team, kind of fits that Scottfrost mold for sure. So, he's kind of a jack of all trades. And I think this is definitely a big position of need that we got, our Pittman replacement, not saying he'll be as good as him, but, someone that at least has strong experience, played at a Power 4 school and was definitely productive there. Next up is the fourth offensive line commit of the class, of the transfer class, is Justin Royce, or Justin Royce. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but this guy, not much tape or anything about him because he played at the D2 level at Virginia Union. He's been there for 2 years now. Another big guy, 6'5", 310 pounds, originally from Suffolk, Virginia. There's really not much tape on him, but I did go back and look at his Twitter. He did get, since he entered the portal, he got 10 offers. There was no, I think we were the only Power 4 offer, but he did get, 4 or 5 group of 5 offers. I believe Marshall was on there, Coastal Carolina, Akron, a couple others. So this seems to be somewhat of a project. It's hard to see much about him. There was he retweeted a lot of stuff from like ex-coaches that are saying this is like one of the most underrated guys in the country, and he's widely considered one of the best offensive tackles in D2. I can't recall too many situations where UC has gone down to the D2 level. They've done a lot of FCS transfers, but this is definitely interesting. I'm assuming Frost or our new O-line coach sees something in him. He obviously has the size, and he's played plenty of reps there at Virginia Union. But other than that, it's hard to get too much info on him. He pretty much had no high school, recruiting or any sort of star rating or anything like that out of high school. But this is someone.
He does have 3 years left, though. So this is a
Correct.
guy that
6'5", 310 too, and I bet he can move.
So, yeah, well, I mean 6'5", 310, and a
even
few
if
years,
he can just stand there, he'll be okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the type of guy that's not going to be a starter, but he's got 3 years, so that means he's got time to learn the system, and and develop. And well, that's a big jump. I mean, Andrew, we talked about it too.
It is, but there's some really. I watched D2 and D3. This last weekend, I watched more of the other levels of college football than, the FBS, just because it's exciting stuff. And some of those guys, I mean, like if there's a big guy like that, there's not a lot of big guys like that. So he was probably the biggest guy on his team, being that size.
He's the Paul Rubelt of the of Division II.
He could be very, very easily, because a lot of those guys, especially Division II and III down there, get a lot smaller. So with the size and everything, there's got to be a reason. There's always a reason you pick somebody up like that and bring him here. I mean, you've seen what some of the FCS guys have been able to do the last couple of years that have been brought in, like Jason Johnson and, guys like that a couple of years ago. I have no problem with that. In fact, I think it's awesome. I also would never pass up on a guy from Harvard or Brown or Yale or any of those places, because you got to have at least one guy that in the locker room that's got his head on his shoulders.
Cerebral.
So, he's going to be smart, and he's going to teach all of them like finance and stuff probably. So
yeah,
it's all good. I love smart guys, playing football. That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
One left.
That's a good point. Yeah, one left. Final one is Phil Picotti. This is a guy that's from Pennsylvania originally, but he transferred for a senior year to IMG Academy, and we know Frost loves his IMG guys. Manny Logan. There was a lot of guys. I think there was like 3 or 4 guys from Frost original recruiting class that were from IMG. Obviously, they're a football powerhouse in Florida, and was really, really good his senior year at IMG. Unfortunately, this is a guy that was actually part of the 2023 class, but has not played a single game yet due to injury. He
2 years
didn't play
in
his
a
entire
row.
freshman year or sophomore year, but basically missed both seasons with serious injuries. So he technically has the medical red shirt and just the regular red shirt. So he would actually have 4 years of eligibility remaining. I would assume this is just kind of a project type of deal, but he was highly recruited out of high school. He, 6'3", 245-pound guy that pretty much had offers from every major program in the country: Oklahoma, Auburn, Michigan, Nebraska. So Frost actually recruited him originally when he was still at Nebraska, ultimately enrolled at Oklahoma, where he was recruited by Ted Roof, funny enough. So a lot of connection to UCF, but he had a lot of promise coming out of high school, but, injuries have derailed the early part of his career. So it is the first linebacker transfer, and linebacker is a position in need for UCF. We'll see if he can overcome those injuries and ultimately play. But this, like I said, out of high school, I mean, he was a beast. Had 144 tackles his senior year. Was like all of the Writers Association's first teams in Pennsylvania, and then in Florida for his senior year. But we'll see what happens and if he can, overcome those injuries. But overall, great day for UCF. They brought in 6 new players today alone, or at least were announced today. And overall are up to 12 total transfers in the class. And there's still more to come. There's quite a few more to come, but I think they're filling out the O-line DB really nicely. And I'm sure they'll be getting a couple other positions as we, in the ensuing months here.
Yeah, I mean, he's, just real quick before we leave Phil, he's a good size linebacker at, the 245-pound level. He did tear his ACL, though. That's one of the challenges with it.
The
it looks
reason
like
I logged on tonight was to talk about this guy. That's what
I thought it was to save Trey from
save
the
Trey
bathroom.
too. But the real reason was I literally had just clicked on something and saw that we signed him. I remember his name coming out of high school. If this guy can get healthy, like, I love stories like this, and I love players like this that, like, this guy's been held down, like not by a coach or whatever, but by a physical problem, and like, that guy was a machine in high school, like you were talking about. He's 6'3", 245. He's a big dude. And like, if he can get himself together physically, like, and mentally at this point, probably from having to deal with all that stuff, this dude's going to be a monster. We'll just see if he can do it physically. That's going to be the biggest thing. But I'm super, super excited about this kid.
All right. So I agree. And I'm just reading the comments right now in the private chat, guys. You don't want to know. It was murder of the highest degree. All right. So, one thing before we pivot, because I was getting ready to pivot again, but we got Trey back. Trey, for the listeners and the viewers, one of the things we talked about was Mike Dawson. I just wanted you to give a few points about your experience with Mike Dawson as a coach, as you were coached by him.
Yeah, I mean, he coached D-line, but the good thing about Coach Frost is those guys know how to coach every position, and they've seen it at every level. Coach Dawson comes from the NFL. He's coached college a lot. He's coached with the Eagles. He's coached with the Giants. So he's seen the best of the best. He's seen the best technique. He's gone up against it. He's a hard-nosed guy. He does not take any BS. I mean, that guy is straight stone cold killer, but he loves you to death. I mean, off the field, he takes care of you. He's going to make sure you're doing all right. And he builds that relationship with his guys, because to me, that's the only way you can maximize and get the best out of them, is you have to care for them. And sometimes, it's tough love. He does it a little bit more often than others, but again, you need that with the especially up front with the big hog mollies, man. You got to get those guys fired up. They got to be mean, angry, and the best way to do that is love them and then coach them up hard. So I think they're going to be in good hands. He definitely will make them a physical group. But just like every coach that I've known Coach Frost to hire, even guys that he hired and holdovers and other guys that he kept, those guys care about him. I don't think you're going to coach on his roster if you don't show you care about your players, if you don't want to care about them, So I think Coach Dawson will get the best out of him. That's just my opinion. And I know I'm biased. I've been telling you guys from the beginning I wanted Coach Frost back. But I can be objective. He definitely is a great coach. Seen it at every level as well.
All right. So thank you for that. If anybody has any questions for Trey on Coach Dawson, just hit up the chat to kind of pivot. There it is. All right. Other UCF news. It looks like running back Wayman Jordan didn't officially sign. He was the number one JUCO running back. So a little interesting that he hasn't signed yet. I don't know if he's still shopping the portal or what, but he did commit, or maybe he's waiting on the running back coach to be officially named. UCF does lose a few more transfers. Linebacker Ziri Alexander. I really hated that to see him go. He had a lot of promise. He was a good linebacker. Unfortunately, he got paid. Adrian Medley also left from the line. And Riley Trujillo, or Trujillo, wow, I'm messing that up. Trujillo. I wanted to say it the right way, and then I ended up pulling an Andrew. But
Wow. Okay.
For those of you that remember the Nightline days of the tennis
I don't even
stars,
try. I wasn't even going to try with that linebacker's name earlier. I wouldn't go in there.
That's interesting. Good. Best of luck to
I was going to call him Phil. Phil.
Best of luck to Riley. Jamal Johnson, a bit of good news. Jamal Johnson withdrew from the portal. So that makes it 7 players who've withdrawn their names since we've got our coaching act together. So what do you guys think about that?
Was that the corner or whatever? What was he? A corner or Johnson?
Jamal Johnson?
Yeah.
No, I think he was
he's a defensive lineman.
Or defensive lineman, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so interesting.
There was another Johnson, though, right? Wasn't there a Jason? Not Jason, but
yeah, Jason. That was 2 years ago.
No, there was another like a corner or something. I don't know. He was a Johnson, I think.
I'm sure. Oh, Chasen Johnson. Yeah,
Jason, same kind of one letter difference there. Yeah, I'm bummed that he left because I thought he had the stuff for sure.
Oh, he definitely did, but again, he got paid. So, unfortunately,
it's all about.
It exactly. Unfortunately, it's what it is all about.
Right. Take it personally, though.
Nope. But what do you guys think about these guys sticking around? Trey, I'm interested in your perspective as a player now that the coaching staff's starting to fill out now, and interested in your take, and obviously Andrew as well. But why don't we start it off with Trey? From a player's perspective, coming back to the portal, do you think that's him just shopping and not having found anything, or is this him being comfortable with the coaching staff and just said, screw it, I'm coming back?
It's so hard because I feel like kids jump in the portal at any inconvenience nowadays. So, it's one of those things where, Coach Malzahn leaves to Florida State. The easy thing to do is, shop your options. Now, sometimes he could have had plenty of suitors. It's just maybe whatever he's looking for, a.k.a. possibly money, the money didn't add up. Again, $1.6 million, it's going to be hard to keep a lot of kids away from $1.6 million. I don't
blame the kids. I don't blame the kids at all for leaving for that kind of money. Same way with Lee Hunter, same way with any of these guys.
Not at all.
You almost would be crazy not to, depending on what UCF offered. I don't know the nuance, but I mean, I don't think we're offering 1.6. I'm pretty sure
we are not offering 1.6 million.
So again, he'd almost be crazy because he's probably. I always thought he was an NFL player. I didn't know if that was a second round guy or if that was a 5th or 6th round guy. I don't know which one it was, but he's a dominant defensive lineman, and you can never have enough. And Texas Tech is emptying the bank. So I don't know if it was just maybe he wanted to shop around, see what was out there. Did he get what he wanted, or maybe he was just like, the coaches saw a future. He was just waiting to see who we hired, who his coach would be possibly, or just what the scheme is going to be for him. And he bought in. I don't know if that's something we can hold against players nowadays. with coaching changes because like we've always talked about, it's free agency at this point. It's NFL. I got to do what's best for me. Whereas, when my coach, when Coach O'Leary left my year, we were waiting until we got a coach, and then we sat, and then we go through spring, and guys left, of course, but you give it a shot. Now it's like, oh, coach left, I'm going to the portal, see what I can get, and we definitely didn't have the incentive of chasing money back then either. So, it could be a multitude of reasons. I don't know exactly what it was. I like to think he was just waiting to see. I like to think that's how players go into the portal for that reason, to see what the coaching staff is and if they can buy in or believe that they fit this scheme and this is what they want to maximize their abilities. That's what I'd hope. I hope he wasn't just going in, auctioning off to the highest bidder.
Alan?
In regards to what? Sorry.
Jamal Johnson staying, his reasoning.
Yeah, I think part of it is obviously Frost was able to convince him. And you also saw a lot of the guys that hopped into the portal and then hopped back out were defensive guys, interesting enough, like the Henderson twins, Cam Moore. So I don't know if that had to do something with maybe the DC being hired or just the Frost kind of excitement and hype there. But Jamal Johnson, there's not a lot of tape on him. He didn't get a ton of playing time, but he was one of those hometown hero guys that were highly recruited out of high school. One of the guys that was really hyped up in one of Malzahn's classes. I think it was the 2023 class. So could be money, could be a combination of a couple different things. He started to get more playing time this year. So I think it is nice to have him back. He was starting to a little bit, I wouldn't say break out, but at least, starting to get a little bit more playing time. But it's good to see him back. I don't know the exact reasons, but it seems interesting. A lot of the defensive guys seem like maybe they got together and decided to come back. If you look at the guys that withdrew their name, like 75% of them are defensive. So maybe it's just kind of a brotherhood bond type of thing. I'm not sure, but glad to have him back.
Andrew, any thoughts?
I love it when these guys stick around. Personally, I think that Frost can be a pretty rah-rah guy sometimes. So I'm sure that they're kind of excited. And I know that a lot of these players know what he did here before. So I would love to be on a Frost team, to be honest with you, just because of what everybody says. Everybody loves him, and he did it here before, so let's see if he can do it again. He's sure as hell going to try.
I will say he was only in the portal for 2 days, which is pretty awesome. He was Jamal Johnson. He was recruited by Indiana, Georgia Tech, and Boston College. I'm glad he's back. He's starting to get some run. Right now we need as many of those guys that are starting to emerge as we possibly can. So I think
it meant that they liked it here too. For some reason, they may have liked the campus. They may have a girlfriend on the campus, whatever. But they liked it enough to stay.
That didn't stop Trey. He went to Nebraska. He left his girlfriend here.
Mind you, my girlfriend graduated after, so she was already gone. So it was a little bit easier. But I know guys who, not at UCF, but who have gone to colleges or stayed at a bad situation for them for their girlfriend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The ECU guy that we had last year that was a 4-star that went to ECU had a similar situation. So it 100% still happens. All right, let's go ahead and pivot one more time.
Pivot.
All right. Alan has completely forgotten how this show works.
Pivot.
There it is. All right. Delayed pivot. He's got Wi-Fi issues.
So I'm never doing it.
All right. Let's talk a little bit of UCF hoops. But before we do that, just another quick reminder to check us out, like, subscribe, etc. And Ben Stout will be joining Chance McSpadden on Thursday for another UCF Live for the Knighted Ones to preview the Big 12 conference play as the Knights gear up to get ready to start their way through conference. So excited about that. We've had Chance on before. There'll be a lot of really, really good hoops talk. Same time, same place, just simply on Thursday. So UCF finishes out the season with a win, 86-66 to finish non-conference play on a 5-game winning streak, 9-2 overall, and undefeated at home. So if you had UCF season tickets, you were treated to not having one single loss in the arena. Versus Jacksonville, it was interesting. They had a interesting schedule coming into this game. They end up 6-6. They were above 500. They're not going to be a team that is going to be a quad 1 or quad 2 win, but they have a really, really good team and are expected to compete for their conference championship as well. So this is one of those teams where it doesn't help our net as much, except for the fact that we beat them by 20 points. But it does help us because long-term that net and their quadrant, it should be a quad 3 win before the end of the season. So that's a net positive for it. They did before us. They played Florida Atlantic, got beat by them. They played Georgia, got beat by them. Played Virginia Tech and beat Virginia Tech 74-64. So there is an opportunity for them to move up in their net, and they should overall help us in the long term. This game, however, saw some exciting returns. Mikey Williams. Why is Mikey Keene on my brain? I can't get rid of him.
Probably because his Bulldogs got beat today in their bowl game without him.
Yeah, that's true. Well, he just got signed by Michigan, did he not?
Something like that.
Yeah, he just got signed by Michigan. So anyway, not yep. Mikey Keene. Mikey Williams did end up seeing his first college minutes, and we saw Sellers come back, much anticipated. As he said in the post game, there was just as few as a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of thought that he might not be able to make it back for the season. He talked about that in his post-game press conference in this game. So that was a reality that we were all kind of coming to grips with. We talked about it here as folks were asking about whether he would come back. But did he come back? Yes, and he came back in a big way. His first play of the game was that big alley-oop dump. And he didn't look like he missed a step, had limited minutes. The plan was to have him only have 11 to 13 minutes. Didn't quite get that this game, but looked like he didn't lose a step. He was shooting the ball well. He was moving on the floor well. He recognized the defense. He was where he needed to be offensively. So really, really exciting to get Sellers back because I think he answered a lot of questions in this game. What do you guys think about Sellers' performance?
Is he going to come off the bench like going forward? Because he was off the bench.
He's going to come off the bench for a while. He needs to get back in game shape. And, he's been off the court for quite a while. As in football, there's going to be probably 3 to 4 games that he's going to, they're going to work his minutes up. And in conference play, again, you're playing twice a week. Right. So the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've only been playing 1 game a week. So after the holiday season is over, he's going to need to get back in game shape. He did tweak his ankle a little bit from the looks of it when he was on the court, but he looks fine there. So, yes, I expect him to start. I do expect him, depending on how he reacts as they increase his minutes, I think that he will eventually get back to a starting role for this team.
Was this the one that hurt his back?
Correct.
Yeah, that's awesome that he's back.
Yeah. Awesome. Led the Big 12, one of the leading scorers last year for the Big 12, and was a super important piece for us this season and to our postseason aspirations. Awesome. Taylor was also out this game, but Coach Dawkins did verify that it was just a cold he was dealing with. So he should be back. He's emerged as a really good player for us as well. In this game, Hall showed out again, 21 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Jordan Ivy Curry he was on fire from three. He was literally hitting just about everything, especially in the first half that he threw up, which was good to see. Last week you heard me talk about I want to see a full game from this team. We did not play from behind. We were hitting our shots early on. There were no 0 for 9s from the three-point line. They were moving the ball well. They played pretty good defensively, held this team to 66 points, which is, I think, their best of the season, and would have had a season high in first half points had it not been for a missed free throw. So this offensively and defensively, this game they played really well. Jarius Johnson, 12.6 rebounds, 5 steals, 3 assists. Didn't do much of anything as far as scoring was concerned in the first half, so it was good to see him come back. Chim had another great game, 10 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks. And Sellers chipped in 7 points as well. He was all over the floor. He was running the floor well. He was this team was turnover prone, but we did a good job of getting in all the passing lanes. UCF shot 59% from the field. One of the best shooting performances of the entire season. Jacksonville shot 41%, which is crazy. They were 10 of 17 from 3, which that's those kinds of numbers. If we can keep them up, obviously we're not going to for the entire season because that's a really, really good percentage. But if we can keep at least, 40% shooting from 3, this is going to be a real competitive team. We out-rebounded Jacksonville 31-24 and forced 11 turnovers to win this game. Now, the only thing that I could say that, Coach Dawkins always talks about the things that he wants to learn in the game. Again, there were some times where we went in stretches where we just weren't playing smart basketball when we had the ball in our hands, throwing away with some of the turnovers we had. So that's something that's important. Points in the paint, 32-28. And overall, this was just a really solid way to end non-conference play and to gear up for that conference season, which starts with Texas Tech and the next game. And the guys on Thursday will delve a lot deeper into this team and into the conference on Thursday. So make sure you tune in for that. As of right now, the Big 12 has 5 ranked teams. Number 3, Iowa State. Number 7, Kansas. Number 15, Houston. Number 17, Cincinnati. And number 25, Baylor.
Get ready.
Kansas State is right there too. This team, there's a lot of 9-2 teams in this conference, with Arizona and Arizona State being towards the bottom. But even Arizona, a lot of their losses were against big name and highly ranked teams. So they will be competitive too. So don't be fooled by what that non-conference schedule looks like. Even Arizona, who's currently at the bottom of the league, is going to be a really, really, really tough out for UCF. So lots of exciting basketball coming your way for your Knights. Anything that you guys want to add to that?
I think it's 9-2 start. Last year we started out 9-3 in conference out of conference play. Once again, strong start, but outside of a few games, obviously most of these were pretty winnable. I don't think we had the true test yet. Obviously, Texas A&M and LSU, Wisconsin, some of the games were tough, but until we really get into the beast of the Big 12 schedule, I don't think we'll know much. But I'm excited. I think this team is deeper and better than last year. So starts off right away tough with Texas Tech. So we'll learn a lot here in the coming weeks, like you said, with some really good opponents on the schedule.
Yeah, missed opportunity with LSU, and there were a quad 2 win that we should have won. We were winning that game. We let them get back into it and then lost in triple overtime. So that should have been a game that we won as well. So without further ado, just make sure you tune in on Thursday for that big conference breakdown with 2 of UCF's former basketball stars. All right. Let's go ahead and pivot one more time to a little bit of listener love. All right, Trey, you were getting ready to say it. Did you say it?
Yeah, Alan said it quickly and it made me laugh. So
Oh, okay.
I'm just
All
saying, go ahead.
All right. So this is the time of the show where we call out some of our new listeners and give a little bit of listener love to folks that comment. Obviously, we had 395 comments on last week's show. So shout out to everyone that participated in that. That was awesome. We love it when you guys are live and when you guys are active. For those of you that followed, and subscribed, I don't get to see all of you because not all of you have that set as public. So those that do, I like to thank you for doing that. There's a plethora of people on Twitter also that is following us. But for this week, big shout out to Going Golf in 1999, Kelly Lowe, Ken McGuffey, Chris Carter, who was very active last week. Thank you, Chris, and former UCF player. Love to see that in the chat. Justin, Nikolai, John Stanford, and Ryan Roy. Thank you all for subscribing. I encourage you all to continue to do that. We picked up 24 subscribers since the last show.
Subscribe.
Yep. So like and subscribe. And that includes all the podcast channels too, because we do put these back out on the podcast platforms as well. Whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Spreaker, any other platform that you may have. Make sure you're following, subscribing, leave comments. Go ahead and give us an evaluation if you'd like. All right. So thank you, everyone. And shout out to Ray and everybody else that's participating in the comments this week. So that leaves us with another pivot.
Pivot.
All right. There we go.
Now, that's
Alan.
the third time you said last pivot.
What? Did I really?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Second to last pivot. Since Josh is not here this week to give us his sometimes funny fact of the week, Alan, do you have an oxymoronic stat of the week for us this week?
I do. Just about the UCF men's basketball team. It's just short and sweet, but I thought this was interesting. Last year, it seemed like UCF really got it done, and the basketball team got it done with defense. Rebounding, even points in the paint, but it's kind of been, at least through non-conference play, been a lot different so far to start the season. So they've been out-rebounded actually in 6 games, but 3 of those have been wins. So despite being out-rebounded, they were able to win 3 of those games. Then in 6 of their 9 wins this year, they've been outscored points in the paint. Thought that was interesting. And then last year through non-conference play, they were giving up an average of 64.1 points per game with an extra game. Last year we had 12 non-conference. This year it looked like it was only 11. And this year we're giving about full 10 points more through non-conference play at 74 points per game. So the winning, while we have essentially the same record as last year in non-conference play, it's been a little bit different. It's not really as much, it seems, on the defensive side of the ball, and some of the things we were doing really well last year. The shooting is actually a lot better. If you looked at the 3-point percentages really over the last 5 or 6 games, it's been dramatically improved. So interesting that it's not necessarily like a typical Johnny Dawkins type of, wins so far, but maybe that will change in conference play.
Awesome. Well, that being said, thank you, Alan. Let's go ahead and pivot again. And this is the last time.
Pivot.
All right. Time to do a little quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch. So number one, I wanted to bring up that we have a new volleyball coach in Florida Gulf Coast, Matt Bodsford. So a few interesting things about Matt Bodsford. Our volleyball team has been struggling a little bit. We talked about that earlier, in earlier episodes. But this is a huge hire. He is the head coach was the head coach for Florida Gulf Coast, a team that has been really, really successful, and he's been really, really successful there. On top of that, he also started their beach volleyball program, which we are the only one of the only major schools in the state of Florida that does not have a beach volleyball program at this point. So very interesting. I know that we're kind of strapped for cash right now, but it's one of the cheaper options to start a beach volleyball program, and I think UCF would kill in that. Now, a few facts about Matt Botsford to hopefully get you excited. He's ranked 9th nationally among Division I coaches in career winning percentage and 11th in total wins. That's huge. He's the 10th coach here at UCF, and he spent the last 11 seasons at Florida Gulf Coast. He's been to 4 consecutive Atlantic Sun Conference championships, including 4 consecutive and 5 total NCAA tournament appearances. So this guy gets to the tournament. He also guided the Eagles to their first NCAA first round win in 2018. Coach Dagenet actually gave a shout out to him as well, saying that he's one of the guys that's very innovative, but at the same time grounded in fundamentals, an old school type of coach. So he'll get the most out of his team. As a head coach, he has a 77% win percentage. So 263 and 78, 77.1 career win percentage. 2024 American Volleyball Coaches Association regional Southeast Region Coach of the Year. So again, why am I saying all this? There's a lot more accolades that I could go to. His team just came off a 27-5 record, and he is an extremely good hire for UCF. Well thought of within volleyball circles. Very successful where he was, and this is a really big pickup. When you get coaches like this that can do this year after year after year after year. I mean, we're talking about 400 games this guy has coached as a head coach and has a 77% win percentage. That means you're doing something really right, and he can take that to UCF, and I expect us to get and see a lot of success.
Todd Dagenet had very nice things to say about him as well. So, if he has nice things to say about you, you're a real dude. So.
Yeah. All right, Coach Melzon. Thank you. He's a real dude.
I've always said that.
I know. I'm just messing with you. But yeah, no, absolutely 100% correct. Coach Dagenet is well respected, obviously, in collegiate circles, but also as a professional volleyball coach. Now
just
that
as
he's
a person,
moved on.
man, that dude's a great guy.
Oh, 100%.
A really great guy.
100%. So last but not least, but this time last, we'll talk about UCF women's basketball. Unfortunately, they did lose to High Point 64-60 and then lost to number 11 TCU 92-52 in the team's first Big 12 game of the year. They are now 7-4 overall. Unfortunately, have lost 4 of their last 5 and play at number 18 West Virginia next, which Knights fans, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but don't expect much at number 18 West Virginia. This team has been decimated. I mean, absolutely decimated by the injury bug, and in fact, lost yet another player in this last game that they played against TCU. So this is not the same team that started the season. This is not the same team that we had such high expectations for. It's not to say that the players that are out there aren't good, but there's a huge gap when it comes to women's basketball teams on the top echelon of NCAA basketball teams. And guess what? 2 to 3 of them reside in the Big 12. So it's going to be it's going to be a very, very long season, unfortunately, for them. And we, in the background, Nobra has been trying to get up a picture, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get it.
I can do it with my phone to my camera if I absolutely have to, but you have to see this picture.
All right, go ahead, Andrew.
That's our new linebacker from Oklahoma. There was a guy that played for Oklahoma back in the day. I don't know if you remember him. This guy's got a mullet. This is awesome. So, do you remember? Anybody remember Brian Bosworth?
Yeah,
of course, the Boz.
I guarantee that this kid grew up wanting to play for the Sooners. I mean, he looks like Brian Bosworth. He does, not as big, but like that picture is obviously an ode to him. And I'm telling you, I hope this guy stays healthy, because he's just, you can just tell like from pictures of him and everything else that he's like I don't know.
He's a real dude.
He's a freaking superstar if he can stay healthy. Like, I have a really good feeling about this guy. If he can stay healthy, he will wreak havoc. I'm telling you, he'll be a wrecking ball. I said that earlier so on Rivals on the dungeon. I've watched tape on this guy from high school. He's insane if he can stay healthy. So
yep, that's the big thing. He's got the size. He's got all the measurables.
He's had 2 years to heal. I mean, you know, he's had issues, but I mean, he's had some time to heal, and he'll have a little bit more time with this transition. So hopefully, I'm just excited. I love to get excited about like players, and people like this excite me. Like, look what happened with Shaquem Griffin. Like,
yep,
that was a different situation because he was overlooked by a coach more than having an injury or whatever. Everybody knows, you know, he doesn't have a hand and all that. But like kids like that, like this guy that have the will to get through injuries like that, and that were so highly rated in the beginning, to finally get to that point of being able to do their thing that they've been wanting to do and dreamed of doing for so long, that can be magical. You know, I mean, we saw it with Shaquem getting the chance at UCF. All he had to have was a chance, and he was a machine. So
absolutely. Let's hope lightning strikes twice. So
I hope so. I mean, I think it will, man. Like, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
100%. Right? That's what keeps us coming back year after
Whoever
year.
thought Scottfrost would be back here for real?
It wasn't me. I never thought
that.
Pipe
dream.
After everything that happened, especially with the way he exited Nebraska, and then everything else that happened at Nebraska and afterwards, I didn't think he would ever be back here. That's for sure.
Either. It would be, you know, things happen. Crazy stuff happens. Especially with Scottfrost. It's just.
Well, let's hope more crazy things happen in a good way, and not the crazy things that happen in Nebraska. And,
no, I think he's learned. He's matured. You know, like I said in the very first thing. I know I repeat myself, but I repeat things that I think they're important. He's had time to learn. He's had time to grow up. So I'm excited about the entire thing. And I was not excited for last year or the year before, to be honest with you. I'm more excited about UCF football than I've been in a long time, which is a couple of years, a long time.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's I think that's what Terry Mohajir was after with this hire. So let's keep up the excitement and let's get to the winning. All right. That'll do it for us this week. You know, again, thank you everybody who participated. Make sure you're liking, following, subscribing, doing all the things. Make sure you give us reviews. If there's anything any feedback you'd like to give us, we're all ears when it comes to that. We appreciate your support and continued support. And go Knights and
charge on.
And Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year.
And Merry Christmas.
And Happy Holidays.
And yeah,
whatever you're celebrating.
Exactly, 100%.